bad YouTuber, hashtag bad YouTuber strikes again. It has been so long since I have done one of these videos, and Madison, this is for you, girl, because you held my feet to the fire and said, get your wrap-ups done, girl. Get your wrap-up done. So that's what we're going to do today. Hey guys, we are back with another one. And like I said in our little quick intro, I want to start out this video by saying a thank you to Madison. She is the sweetest subscriber, and she basically very gently, respectfully, and sweetly brought to my attention that it has been 17 and a half years, it seems, since I have done a wrap-up. And I think it was a classic case of time flying and me not realizing how long it had been, because sure enough, I scrolled back on the channel and the last time I did a wrap-up was the October-November wrap-up. So I never really know if people like monthly wrap-ups. Like, sometimes I think they're useful and other times, because most of the time I'm reading in vlogs and like challenges, you kind of see what I'm reading and what my thoughts are at the end of the videos. But drop a comment down below and tell me genuinely, like seriously, do you like monthly wrap-ups on YouTube? Do you enjoy, even though maybe sometimes it might be slightly repetitive, because if you watch my vlogs at the end, I always am like giving you my wrapped up thoughts for that video, but do you enjoy when I take my monthly reading and compile it into one video, or my bi-monthly or however long, and compile it into one video and give you guys like a quick rundown of what I thought about my reads that month? So comment down below and tell me if that's something you're into. But for right now, like I said, the last time I did this was October-November reads, so that means we have to do December through March reads, which is crazy. And I literally had to go and make 3 pages of notes on my reads and my ratings and what I thought to keep myself organized. Obviously, most of these books I do have physically, but I am too lazy to go and pull them all back off of my shelves. And once I'm done reading, they go on my red shelf, and that is a shelf that all of my friends and family know they can come over and, like, without asking permission, just like indiscriminately borrow off of and take books off of. So some of these books, even though I do own them physically and I read them physically, they're not currently here in this house because they've been borrowed or taken. So we're just going to go ahead and throw photos up on the screen for all of them, because it doesn't really obviously matter for me to hold up a book. And because I'm doing 4 months of wrap-ups, I am going to keep these descriptions and thoughts relatively brief. So I'm basically going to tell you what I read in what month, what star rating I gave it, and some like couple of quick thoughts about it. And any other like further questions you have or details you want, drop a comment. I'm always down in the comments answering, and I would love to have like more in-depth conversations about any of these books and any of my thoughts. But for the sake of time and how many books we have to talk about, we're just going to keep it brief in this video. Okay, so starting off strong in December, we went into December reading The Prison Healer as my first book, and I gave this a 4-star. I have here in my notes, I loved the premise and the setting of this book. It was really unique in that it was in like a prison, and it wasn't in like a prison, it was in a prison. It was set in a prison, and I said, I liked our female main character, but one of the issues that I did have, which like knocked some stars off of my rating, was that it did have that complex that felt like the main male character kept getting herself into these like seemingly impossible pickles, you know, like seemingly impossible situations. And she would come up with this very convenient way to get out of literally 100% of them, which I like, to a certain extent, I understand that like it keeps it interesting and it keeps the plot line moving, but at the same time, it does get a bit outlandish when that happens. So I did write down that it kind of seemed like the main female character had the best luck ever and would get herself into these deadly situations and would survive and get away with literally everything. So I put that kind of got a little bit, gave me a little bit of an illogical vibe. I guess that's a good way of saying it. Like, it was just a bit illogical at times. And I did say that I was absolutely going to continue the series. I think the next one is The Gilded Cage, because I am intrigued by the relationships between the characters. And we finished off book 1 very much not knowing who we can trust. And I am still not 100% sold on the love interest. I am like very suspicious of everyone, and I want to see how that ends up playing out. So I will be continuing on to The Gilded Cage. The next book I went into was Killjoy, which is the novella in the Good Girl's Guide to Murder series. It is a novella. It's also a prequel. So it's a prequel novella to the Good Girl's Guide to Murder series by Holly Jackson. And I'm going to preface this by saying, if you have read this series, which I've read the entire thing, you will know that, like, the Pip, the main female character in the first couple of books, is a very different Pip than you get in the last couple of books. And I am very much I'm a reader who prefers previous, like, first couple of books Pip. I didn't like her character arc as the series went on. So I did like in this prequel that we got, like, previous Pip. I prefer her. I like her better. So that was a good thing. However, this novella basically was before the circumstances happened and before Andy Bell goes missing, which is the premise of the first book. This girl goes missing and Pip is going to solve or attempt to solve the crime via a senior capstone project. So Killjoy takes place prior to Andy Bell going missing and is basically showing just a little bit more of a character development of how Pip gets interested in this, because basically she's invited to a murder mystery party and it strikes up her interest in true crime and solving crimes, which fast forward to when Andy goes missing, she wants to go and solve it. So this was perfectly average. It was fine. Admittedly, I'm not a gigantic fan of this entire series. I felt like Good Girl, Bad Blood, which is the second book in the series, was the best of it, and it still was probably like a 4-star. So I'm not a diehard fan of it, but this was average. I don't really necessarily think there was a strong reason for it to exist. It didn't really add anything to furthering the plot, but it was a cute little 100-and-something page read. It went really fast. So if you are a diehard Good Girl's Guide to Murder fan, read it. But for me, it was a 2.5 star. Next, I went into Ice Planet Barbarians by Ruby Dixon, and there is no possible way to review this book without starting off with this. Keep your expectations realistic and you will enjoy this book. I said it, okay? But don't go into this thinking this is going to be the next Ernest Hemingway, okay? This isn't meant to be Shakespeare, okay? This is meant to be alien smut. It's meant to be fun, okay? I sometimes see people reviewing this book and they're like giving the craziest, most in-depth reviews of the syntax and the prose and the this, and I'm like, hey guys, she does aliens. Like, I don't think syntax was like priority number 1, okay? It's just monster smutty time. That's all it is. And if you keep your realistic expectations going into it, expecting it to be that, it's good. I'm sorry. I will die on this hill. I don't care what anyone has to say. This was a 4-star read for me. It was good because I went into it knowing what I was looking for, right? If I went into this thinking this was the next great American novel, yeah, I could see where I would be disappointed. But I am here to tell you, if you're going to pick up Ice Planet Barbarians, know that it's just going to be a bunch of alien smut. That's what it's going to be. And for that, it accomplished its goal, okay? So that's what I said. Go into it knowing what exactly it is. I did say it was a very quick read. I flew through it. I feel like I read this whole entire book in like 5 hours. It was really quick. So it was fine. I think the only thing that kind of like knocked some stuff off for me, which also kind of is to be expected in this genre, but it did have some cringy dialogue that made me kind of like yucky, kind of icky. So it did have a little bit of dialogue that was cringy. the main alien character, obviously, his second language was English, speaking to the main female character, and some of like the nicknames and the way that he spoke to her in like regular conversation or in the spicy scenes were a little bit like, yuck. Okay. But if you could get past the cringy dialogue and just see it for what it is, I'm sorry. I stand by the fact that it was good. Okay, so the next book starts our foray into my complicated relationship with mystery thrillers. So I read Drowning by TJ Newman, and I gave this a 3.75 stars. And this one is going to be a bit tough for me to talk about because I did enjoy this book, right? Like, I did enjoy it. But mystery thriller is just not my favorite genre. It just isn't. And I'm constantly going into mystery thrillers, just searching for more. And it just always kind of leaves me underwhelmed. And it's a me problem. It's probably not a genre or a book problem, because this arguably was a very well done book. I would say don't go into it if you're not looking for a book on aviation emergency, because that is what TJ Newman has done thus far. This is an aviation emergency mystery thriller where a plane does crash and go down into the water, hence drowning with the plane. It didn't do anything super groundbreaking. I mean, it was an interesting concept and premise. The only thing is it's told through multiple points of view of people that were on the plane, and that was pretty cool to see how each different character was processing the, you know, terror and panic and the situation that they were in, being underwater in a crashed airplane, waiting to be rescued. However, it did get just slightly repetitive and a little bit slow for me. However, it was fine. And when I say mystery thriller, this, I don't know, it's certainly not a mystery. I mean, I guess it had thrilling moments. It's about a plane crash, but for the most part, it was a little like mundane, and it did fall a little flat because it's just about a bunch of people sitting at the bottom of the ocean or this body of water waiting to be rescued. So it's, you know, 300 pages of that while you wait to see what's going to happen. So it was a little slow. It was a little flat. So 3.75 stars. And that's honestly not that bad of a rating when it comes to me in thrillers. In a similar vein, I did read 0 Days by Ruth Ware, and I gave this 3.75 stars as well. And once again, this is kind of similar to how I feel about Drowning, because there was nothing like glaringly wrong with this book. The writing was good. The storyline was interesting. I think that this just suffers from my lack of enthusiasm for the mystery thriller genre, that I'm always kind of searching for something that I like more, and this just maybe wasn't it. But her writing was fine. The storyline was fine. The only thing that really did irritate me a little bit and like bore me a little bit about this book was it was about our two main characters who worked in cybersecurity, and they were like cybersecurity experts, and they basically, their job was to try to crack high-end, they were hired to crack high-end security systems from these companies. They were basically testing cybersecurity programs. And I just felt that a lot of this book was way more detailed on the cybersecurity side than it really needed to get. Like, through so much of this book, they would go into this very advanced technological detail of these programs and systems and equipment and all this. And I would just kind of be like, I don't care. Like, I don't care. I don't need to know this. It doesn't further the story. But if you're someone in IT or who loves super detailed descriptions of like techie stuff, you would probably be way more into this than I was, but it was fine. Next, I read The Selection. I gave this 4 stars, and I'm going to say this was definitely YA, but I liked it a lot more than I thought I was going to. It didn't feel like too YA for me, if you get what I'm saying. I am 35, so sometimes I go into YA, and once again, keeping my expectations realistic, I know what I'm going into. In the young adult genre, I know that I am not the target demographic. I know that it's not written for me specifically, so I go in realistically, but sometimes even knowing that, it is just a little bit like too YA for me. And I was very impressed that The Selection didn't suffer from that for me. I didn't feel like it was, and I genuinely liked our main female character. So basically this book is like The Bachelor, basically, but like throw in, it's not really a fantasy element, but it's about like a poor girl living in a village, and she wins a competition or something, or gets selected to go to the palace and try to win the prince's heart with a bunch of other girls he gets to pick, basically like The Bachelor. And I liked it. I liked our storyline. I liked our main female character. She was, I believe, 18 or 19 years old, so she wasn't stupid or seriously immature to the point where I just like couldn't take her anymore. It was fine. It was good. And I'm going to continue on with the series. So after the selection, I went straight into Flawless by Elsie Silver and gave this 4.5 stars. I loved this book. This is cowboy romance at its best so far for me. I really liked this book. I think the strongest thing that Elsie Silver does is that her writing is incredibly simple and quick and easy to read, but she has built such a great family system in the Eaton family, in this series, in the Chestnut Spring series, and the Eaton family ranch, I think it's called, isn't it called Wishing Well Ranch? I think it's what it's called, is such a fantastically done setting that I am so connected to the Eaton brothers and their family and this ranch. I am so connected to this storyline. I loved this so much, and I really, really liked Rhett and Summer's romance. It was very, what's the word for it? Kind of like respectful. She wrote Summer in a way where she was a city girl in a ranch bullfighting vibe, so she was very much out of her element. But she didn't do it in a way that infantilized or demoralized or made Summer look like an airhead. Like, she didn't do that. Summer was a very respectable, very well-liked character, and I really liked that about her. And Rhett respected her. He knew she was out of her element, but he never demeaned her or made her feel less than because of it. They had a very cute little relationship. And then I also said in my notes, let's see, cute and easy read. Oh, I said you even like them when they're having conflicts, because they handle their conflicts very normally and like maturely. So even when there is those third act like conflicts in the book, which one of them did irritate me, and I'll talk about that in a second, but you still liked them. What else did I say about this? Oh, yeah, okay. So I said it would have been a 5-star if the last conflict didn't happen, which came across as cheapening the communication that Rhett and Summer had for the majority of the book. There you go. So I think that sums it up. That this would have been rated higher. There was one plot point conflict at the end of the book, and the way that they handled it just was very out of character and out of plot line for the way that they'd handled their conflicts up until that. So that kind of irked me a little bit and dropped it just that 1/2 star, I think, right? I said a 4.5. Yeah, just that 1/2 star rating where I couldn't quite tick it over to a 5, but overall super solid, and I definitely say read it. I've already continued on with the series and read Heartless, so I liked it. I highly recommend it. Next in December, I went into Wild as the Witch by Rachel Griffin, and this was a 3.75 for me, and difficult because something about this book just fell flat for me, and I'm having now and had then the hardest time pinpointing exactly what it was, because on the surface there really wasn't anything wrong with it. The writing was solid. Actually, the writing was beautiful. It was pretty lyrical at times. Really well done writing. I loved I almost pictured kind of like Forks, Washington, Twilight-ish, like super overcast, gloomy, rainy, foresty, like out in the middle of the forest kind of vibes. So I did like the setting. And that's why it's so hard for me to talk about, because so much of this book I liked, but the entire time I was reading it, I was just kind of not into it. And I'm still having trouble pinpointing why. I think a large part of the problem was that I didn't necessarily love the main male character or the love interest in the book. Like, I didn't necessarily think that the two, like the main male and main female character, had a ton of chemistry, and I didn't like their romance very much. I found it kind of forced and boring, so that could have been a large part of it. I also wrote down that I found our main female character kind of whiny, and she kind of drove me just slightly crazy. So I really think my objections to this book were character-based, not necessarily writing, setting, or plot-based. I think that's kind of what it was. I am interested to read another Rachel Griffin and see if it is just the way that she writes her characters or if it was just this particular book. But overall, it wasn't my favorite and it didn't enthrall me. And it's one of those books that I will probably never find myself thinking about again. So it was fine. After Wild as the Witch, I hopped into Crave by Tracy Wolff, and I gave this a 4-star. This, I kind of hesitate to call this a reread because I did technically read this book years ago when it came out and when I was younger. And I remembered exactly 0% of what happened in this book. So when I picked it up again, I didn't remember anything about it. And rereading it, I liked it again because I remember liking it the first time. I just, like, nothing stuck. Nothing at all. And I read it again and loved it. I love the Alaskan magical, fantastical boarding school element. I thought it was really cool, and it's kind of like, it's kind of more of like a little bit more of a high stakes Harry Potter, but not really high stakes because Harry Potter is high stakes, but only towards like the end of the series. This starts out like, picture Deathly Hallows, but right from the start, like not having those first couple of introductory books that were just a little bit slower. That's Crave. And I did like it. The only thing was there are a lot of characters, and the villain characters kind of just get away with doing things that there's like no intervention in a school setting. Like, some of the stuff that they do could straight up kill people, and there's just like no consequences for it. You're very much just on your own. So sometimes it went a little over the top with the villain characters and things like that. But overall, it is a solid story. The characters are cool. It's a cool premise. And the boarding school setting up in Alaska was very, very intriguing. So I liked it. I will continue on with Crush is the second one. So I will continue on eventually with Crush. So if I'm willing to carry on in the series, I liked it. Last up in December, I went into These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong, and I am going to preface this by saying this is a Romeo and Juliet retelling, and as my reading journey continues, I think I'm realizing that Shakespeare retellings are just not for me necessarily. I read a lot, not all certainly, but I've read a lot of actual Shakespeare in school, and I like Shakespeare. I'm just thinking that once was enough, and now I'm kind of repeating the story over and over again in retellings, and I don't think I fell in love with Shakespeare enough to warrant reading different versions of the story multiple times, if that makes sense. So every time I go into a Shakespeare retelling, I'm just like, I already read this story. Like, I know what happens in Romeo and Juliet. So Chloe Gong did do this in an incredibly intelligent, very well-written way. And she did put a spin on it. So this is Romeo and Juliet, except from about rival crime families in Shanghai, which was very cool. So I think what kept it at that 3.5 rating instead of going a bit lower was how cool her particular version of the story was. And I did really like Juliet and Roma's banter and their relationship. So I think that was the glue that kind of held this together for me. I just found that the story kind of dragged a bit, which might be Shakespeare related because Shakespeare is very wordy, okay? It's not a quick story, but I just found that this dragged a bit for me, and there were times where I found like I was kind of skimming because I was just kind of over it. However, I will be continuing into Our Violent Ends, I think is what it's called, right? Yeah, Our Violent Ends, the second one, because I do want to see where Juliet and Roma's relationship goes from here. So that does it for December, but in January I started out with None Shall Sleep. This is a YA mystery thriller, and I'm like sitting here now just, I haven't read The Naturals by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, but knowing what I know about it, I think these two storylines are very similar because None Shall Sleep is another book that deals with like younger kids getting involved with like a CIA type operation and helping to solve crimes. And in this case, I believe, if I remember correctly, it was a serial killer. So I did really like the CIA crime, true crime element in this, and I ended up giving it a 3.75 stars. So it was above average, and I did enjoy it. I have here in my notes, the characters were fine, nothing mind-blowing, and it was a quick read, so I will continue. After that, I jumped into Behind the Net, and this book really impressed me. This was a 4.5 stars. This was a deviation from my TBR. I just really was craving a hockey romance in the moment, and I just downloaded it on Kindle Unlimited and dove right into it. And I'm really glad I did. And the thing that really struck me about this hockey romance was the relationship between our characters. And I cannot for the life of me remember, was it Jamie Stryker? I think that was it. I forget. Grace? Was it Grace? Jamie Stryker and was it? Oh my God, I think it was Pippa again. I don't remember. I'll put it on the screen because I forget what their name. I'm horrible with names. We know this. But one thing I really liked was the way that our main male character loved our female main character. He was grumpy and brooding and masculine and a professional like hockey player in a very attractive way, but not alpha, controlling, manipulative, not allowing the main female character to be herself and shine, because he did. And I talked about this in my vlog. There was this scene that's really stuck with me where he had an opportunity to jump in and like save the little lady in a conflict situation, and he didn't. He actually stood behind her with her sister, held her sister back from jumping in and solving the problem for her, and said, we are here to support her, but I have so much respect and confidence for her that I know she can do this on her own, and we should just be here as a support element to back her up. And I really loved that, because so often these main male characters, in their attempts to be masculine and alpha, they don't show that they have confidence in their girlfriends or wives or love interests, and they're constantly trying to jump in and solve problems for them. And it's almost like, let her go, honey. Like, she can handle it. Like, see what she does. Like, you fell in love with this woman for a reason. Respect her. And this relationship was so mature and respectful, and I really, really liked that, because I felt the chemistry between them. They really thought highly of each other. So I say, if that's something that you struggle with in romances, just watching the chemistry kind of wane for you because it doesn't seem like a mature relationship, try Behind the Net, because it's smutty and it's lighthearted, but I liked the romance, so try it. And then we jumped into what I'm pretty sure up until this point has been my highest read of the month, which was Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross. This is the second book in the Letters of Enchantment, is that what it's called? Series. First one obviously being Divine Rivals. And I gave this a 4.75 stars. This was so close to a 5-star read. So close. And honestly, the only reason why I didn't go to a 5-star read was it didn't give me like the 5-star butterflies. I loved it, and there were parts of this book that actually made me emotional, which is very hard to do for me because I'm not an emotional person and I'm not an emotional reader. But this book almost got me there. Like, it made me feel feelings. Mostly because Iris and Roman, our main male and female character, were separated for a lot of the book. Roman, for certain reasons, wasn't quite as aware of it as Iris, but I think we saw that like pining in Iris, where she just so desperately missed and wanted Roman, and that really made me sad for her because I have connected with her as a character. But I loved this book, and very controversial take, but I am a person who prefers Ruthless Vows to Divine Rivals, simply because I disconnected a bit from Divine Rivals because I didn't feel that Iris and Roman's love story was tied into the battle with the gods, if you know, you know, in that book. And because there was that disconnect, I just felt like it wasn't cohesive. And in this book, it is much better explained and tied together. So I liked it, and it didn't become a distraction for me trying to figure out like how these two things are going to pertain to each other. So it was a much more cohesive book for me, and I loved it. And Iris and Roman are like chef's kiss. Next up, I went into Twisted Love by Anna Huang. I say Huang, it might be Huang, I'm not sure about Anna Huang. And this ended up being a 3.75 for me. And honestly, that reasoning was just that for most of the book, the main male character was like a no-go for me. I just didn't love him. What's his name? Alex? Alexi? Alex? I just didn't love him. I actually thought that some of his behaviors that were being portrayed as like how much he loved our main female character was actually like making excuses for straight up stalking her. Like, I didn't love it. He was just kind of mean to her and he stalked her. And she would very clearly say, like, I do not want to see you right now. I do not want to talk to you. And he would follow her in quiet. And I'm just kind of being like, you know, it was written in a way that was like, do you see how much he loves her because he follows her? And I'm like, no, that's creepy. I don't like that. She said, like, give me space. And she doesn't know he's watching her. That's weird. I didn't love it. And honestly, if the main male character had been written in a different way, I probably would have liked this story more and like wanted to root for their relationship more. But because I just didn't care for him, I don't feel like I ever rooted for them. But it was okay. It was fine. You want to listen to my kids fight while I take a sip of my drink? Here's your opportunity. Who else has boys that have like a love-hate relationship like this? They were literally just out playing and now they're yelling at each other. After a romance like Twisted Love, I was ready to jump back into a romantasy world, so I picked up From Blood and Ash by Jennifer Lynn Armentrout, and this was awesome. I gave it a 4-star. I remember absolutely loving our main female character, Poppy, I believe her name was. Poppy? I think so. I loved her. I did find the storyline a bit like slow and meandering at parts, but I liked the overall plot, and I also liked our main male character. However, I do remember thinking that I could tell the first book was like almost like a lot of information that's going to carry you on for the rest of the series. So I did like it, 4 stars. Then I picked up yet another mystery thriller. I picked up The Wife Upstairs by Rachel Hawkins, I believe. And I gave this a 3-star. You're going to sense that theme kind of with mystery thrillers with me. They're kind of just 3-star experiences for me. I just don't know what it was, with the exception of... Do you hear my niece? With the exception of The Last Word by Taylor Adams, they're just kind of... like they're meh experiences for me. I don't know what to tell you. And I keep trying because they're good like palette cleansers between romances and fantasies, but I just don't love them. And this was another example of that. And in this particular one, I found that it suffered from mystery thriller syndrome, where the characters were silly, the interactions were silly, the plot line was silly, the twists were silly, and as I'm reading, I struggle to detach from reality enough to just be like, this would never happen. Like, it's just, they're unbelievable to me, and I struggle with that. I just feel like the characters in mystery thrillers, in order to advance the plot and to make the storyline work, they have to have seemingly like no social or they don't have the ability to read like social or environmental cues. And that's why things kind of fly over their head that allows this mystery to continue, because I would hope that in real life you would pick up on social and environmental cues and be like, whoa, something's going on here. Or like, whoa, I should no longer talk to this person. Something's up with this situation. But they go through life so like blissfully unaware that the story works. But, you know, it is what it is. So now we're going to move into my February reads. And February was a slow month for me. I only picked up and completed 4 books. I believe, was February the month that I got sick? I don't remember, but one of the months I got sick and I just like reading was just not an option for me, but I'm pretty sure it was February. So February I had a slow month. I only read 4 books, and the first book I picked up was Shatter Me by Tahara Mafi, and I gave this 4 stars. This was a solid dystopian read. It was technically classified as YA, but like a lot of the circumstances that happened in it didn't feel very young adult. I actually really, really enjoyed it. I liked our main male character, Juliet. I'm so bad with names. However, the only thing that I'm very confused about, and I'm interested to see what happens moving forward, was the male character who I've heard apparently grows to be the love interest. I didn't like him in this book. Like, I'm not rooting for him, which was weird. So I'm intrigued to see how the plotline continues that eventually makes me like root for him as a book boyfriend, because I didn't like him in this book. But overall, the storyline was great. The writing was solid. A little teensy bit like YA at times, but for the most part, not a like very obviously young adult. And I liked it. It was good. Next up, I went into Icebreaker and gave it a 4.25 stars. I'm not going to say much about this because I feel like a lot of people have talked about this already, and honestly, there's not much to say about it. It is a solid, simple, smutty hockey romance. That's what it is. It's just good. Once again, realistic expectations. You're not going to go into this and come out with your life changed, okay? But you're going to come out with this being a simple, fun, smutty, good time, and if you really love a sports romance, particularly hockey, this is going to tick all your boxes and scratch all your itches. So there you go. Is it going to change your life? No. Is it fun? Yeah. And now for what turned out to be my most disappointing read of this video. I went into Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson, and man, have I heard rave reviews from some people about this book. So maybe my expectations were just way too high, but this ended up being a 2-star read for me. I think this was the only book I read in the last few months that I really actively disliked. I did not like this book, and it was mostly because, well, let's go with the positives first. Once again, it was another situation where it had a magical element boarding school, which I really liked. But I had so many problems with this book. First of all, I remember just being so overwhelmed with the amount of characters that you were introduced to, and not a single one of them was likable. I didn't connect with any of them. And like I said, I remember distinctly saying in my review, typically when we have a lot of characters, there's at least one that I find myself bonding with, and it's becoming my favorite character with my favorite POV, and that never happened in this book. I didn't connect to any of them, and I didn't look forward to reading about any of them. And furthermore, our main female character, who was supposed to be the main POV that we're following, was named Stevie, and I did not like her at all. I found her strange, I found her rude, and what really turned me off, maybe it's because I am a 35-year-old mom, was how incredibly disrespectful she was for seemingly no reason to her parents. She was just a rude little girl, and I didn't like her, and there wasn't really much redeeming about her characters, and every single time her parents would ask her just a simple question, to provoke a conversation, she would dismiss them in a very disrespectful manner, and I just didn't care for her. And then on top of all that, the plotline was kind of silly and had a lot of plot holes to me. I just wasn't really interested, and since I've closed this book, I've never thought about it again. I'm definitely going to give the second one a try because maybe this was the weakest of the bunch, but if it doesn't improve in the second book, I'm probably just going to accept that this isn't the series for me. After Truly Devious, I picked up The Book That Wouldn't Burn, which was yet again another recommendation from Madison, and I gave this book a 4-star. Just the way that Mark Lawrence's brain works is amazing. This book is stunningly written. It is beautifully written, and I did enjoy it. The only criticism I have for it is that it was written in a way that I didn't 100% connect to, and I found myself zoning out a lot while I was reading it, to the point where I kept finding myself having to go back and reread paragraphs because I would confuse myself not fully paying attention. It didn't fully hold my interest because it did get quite slow at times. It also is just a book that I feel like I never completely understood fully what was going on. There was a lot of times when I would read an entire character's POV and be like, what did that have to do with anything? I was so confused, and sometimes that would be cleared up a couple chapters later, but for that 4 chapters I was I'm confused as to what is happening. But it's beautifully written. I honestly think that Mark Lawrence's brain just thinks in a different way than mine does, and this probably was cohesive and flowing to him, and just I processed it differently, and it was really beautifully, lyrically, almost poetically written at times. So I'm conflicted about this one, and just for the sheer writing, creativity, and plot alone, it gets a 4. I don't know if this is my ideal writing style, though. And now for my most recent reads in the month of March. I first picked up Midnight is the Darkest Hour by Ashley Winstead, and I gave this book a 3.25. I described this in this reading challenge video as a patchwork quilt of tropes. The best way I could describe this book was it was just trying to do too much all at once. It was just kind of an odd book. And I just feel like she had such a good idea on paper when she started writing this book. And then she like got out a pen and paper and wrote down a bunch of potential ideas, and she tried to squeeze them all into the book instead of like editing them down, right? And I forget how I described the book in that video, but it was basically like, how did I describe it? Southern Baptist murder mystery cult Bonnie and Clyde or something like that. Like, I don't even remember exactly how I said it, but there was just, if you were confused by that, like, yes, exactly. That's how I felt through the entire book, because there was just too much going on. Then I picked up The Nanny by Lana Ferguson and gave it a 3.75 stars. This was 90% or like 80% smut, 10 to 20% plot, really. And there was a couple things in it that I didn't care for, but overall it was a nanny smutty romance. Then I picked up Bride by Ali Hazelwood and gave this a 4.5 stars. This is a vampire werewolf marriage of convenience, and it was so good. And it really made me understand why Ali Hazelwood is such a loved writer or author, because she wrote in such a easy to consume way that I'm like so excited to move forward and pick up The Love Hypothesis, because her writing is exactly what I look for. And I loved her dialogue. I loved her banter. I loved the way she developed her characters, and I flew through this book. Bride was so good. If you are looking for a good introductory romantasy, fantastical werewolf vampire type of romantasy, and you don't mind smut, you have to want smut. No closed door here, okay? And you don't mind that, Bride by Ali Hazelwood might be a good start for you. After that, I went into what might be my second favorite read of this year so far, which was Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. This book I gave a 4.5 stars, and it earned every single part of that. This is a literary fiction, which if I'm giving a lit fic, which is not one of my preferred genres, a 4.5 stars, that should tell you how good this book was. This book is stunning. It's amazing. It is such an exploration of grief and connection with not only other people, but with animals, and how an animal can interpret feelings, and the intelligence of Marcellus the octopus was just such a huge plot point. I cannot say enough about this book. The characters were fantastic. One of the characters is Marcellus the octopus. You get his point of view, which is so cute and so interesting and unique and well done, that I really honestly think that everyone should pick up Remarkably Bright Creatures at some point, because I really feel like this will elevate your reading experience and give you something different from what ends up becoming popular on BookTube and Bookstagram and BookTok. Like, books like this don't get as much attention as a lot of these like hyped books on, you know, the book, in the book world. And this deserves so much hype. Please go read the synopsis for this and pick it up if it sounds interesting, and push yourself if you're not a lit fic girly, because you will love this book. Continuing on with our mystery thriller semi-disappointments, I picked up She Started It and gave it a 3-star. I'm not going to say too much because my thoughts are kind of the same as all the other mystery thrillers I talked about in this book, or in this video, but this book was just kind of silly. It was ridiculous. It was over the top. It was ostentatious, and the characters were unlikable, and they deserved everything they got. So if I was supposed to feel bad for any of them, I didn't. Next, I picked up Destroy Me, which is the next novella in the Shatter Me series. So I think it goes Shatter Me, Destroy Me. Is it like Imagine Me or something? Ignite Me? I don't know what comes next, but I'll put the little thing up on the screen. But this is a short little novella that goes between the first and second books. And I gave this a 3.7 stars, which is kind of like, it's a high rating for me for a novella. Like, I feel like in the ACOTAR series, I gave A Court of Frost and Starlight a 3.75 too. for me, I can't ever see a novella getting like a 5-star because that's not their intent for me. Novellas are typically like little fillers in between that might just add like a slightly repetitive POV that gives you another character's perspective. It's, you know, it's not meant to be groundbreaking. It's just meant to add like additional context to a book. So overall, this getting a 3.75 stars as a little novella that's like a filler between 2 established books in the series is pretty good. But this was just Aaron Warner's point of view from the Shatter Me, like from right directly after what happened in Shatter Me happened, and it was fine. It was cute. It did make me appreciate Aaron Warner just a little bit more though. So although I'm still not like the head of his fan club, like maybe he will be redeeming in the future in the series. I'm not sure, but I'm absolutely continuing the series because I really do enjoy it, and Tara Mafi's writing is really great. And then, last but certainly not least, was my last read for March, which was the Homey and Homely's inaugural first book, which is so exciting. And we read Aragon together, and I gave this a 4.25. I really, really loved Aragon. And for that being said, I don't know if it's technically classified as YA or middle grade. I would classify it more as YA because there were some like fight elements and stuff like that, and you're dealing with some topics with the characters that I think might just be slightly mature for middle grade. But I really, really loved this book. I mean, it's a cult favorite for a reason, and we had so much fun reading it together. The discussion was awesome. So many things happened in this book that we ended up like writing in a comment in our book club discussion. It was so funny to hear everybody's different takes. And one thing that happened that was really funny was there was a situation with one of the characters where the character really irritated me personally, and I wrote a little comment on that chapter's section, and I was like, oh, why did I didn't like this decision. Why did they like that? I don't like when this character does that. And it really was fun because somebody else in the book club, another member of the book club, commented and was like, I completely disagree with you. Like, I interpreted this completely different, and I understand why this character did this. And remember, in a couple chapters ago, we learned this about that character's backstory, and that makes total sense that they would have reacted that way. And it was just such a fun reading experience, and it was such a learning experience for me seeing how different people interpreted different books and different chapters and different characters in different ways. And that would have been an experience I never would have gotten to have if I didn't read this with all of the fantastic members of the Homey and Homely book club. And for that, I'm so eternally grateful, and I cannot wait to continue the Aragon series. So there you have it, guys. There are the 27 books I've read from December to March. That's pretty crazy. I've had so many great reads, but one thing that I noticed going through all these is that I have not had a 5-star read in quite a long time. I am so incredibly stingy and picky with my 5-star reads. I don't know if one will happen soon, so can I help you?
And also there's no toilet paper upstairs, so.
Okay, well, let me finish doing what I'm doing.
Okay.
I would say that I would do one of those, like, this video ends when I find a 5-star read, but that could very well take me all year. Like, I do not give 5 stars easily. Actually, that would be an interesting thing to look at, what the last 5-star was that I gave. I know I gave Fourth Wing a 5-star. That was hands down my favorite read of last year. Maybe I should go into Iron Flame, but I'm scared because I've heard it could be slightly disappointing. But I don't know. What do you think? Do you think I should do a this video ends when I get a 5-star? We could wait a year for that. Whatever. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll surprise you all, and that's what I'll do. But thank you guys so much for watching. Please comment below if you've read any of these books, which ones you liked, which ones you didn't. And tell me if you're somebody who likes Truly Devious, because it's bothering me that so many people love that book, and I would love to hear why. But if you have stuck around this long in this story, please comment let's see, the sleep emoji for none shall sleep. And then please, if you're still here, do all the things that you're so good at doing. Like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye, guys.